On Saturday afternoon in the US, that's midnight time the same day here in the UK, AFC Bournemouth will be facing Wrexham for the first time in nearly 20 years. We've had some pretty good memories against them really, but also some painful ones as well. I remember that 0-0 in 1999 at Dean Court, the old Dean Court. I stood on the south end. A win would have secured us the playoffs. Oh, dreadful. But then I also remember the 6-0. That 6-0 game where James Hayter scored, what was it, 2-minute, 20-second hat-trick? But since then, times have changed for both clubs, and our journeys to where we are now has been the same but different. We all know what happened with Bournemouth. Administration, minus 17 points, being so close to being out the Football League, that Steve Fletcher goal, of course Eddie Howe, new owners, and ultimately the Premier League. For Wrexham, a similar story of off-the-pitch problems, a points deduction, but for them, relegation to the non-league, a stay that lasted way too long, 15 years in fact. But then, in 2020, things, they started to change. So, to talk about the journey since then, we've got Nathan on from Rob Ryan Red podcast here, talking all things Wrexham. Nath, how are you?
Delighted to be on. I'm like you say, a few years ago I wouldn't have expected a US Canadian tour, second US Canadian tour, playing Bournemouth, playing Chelsea. It's times like this when I get to the pre-season and we used to play down the road, it's very, very surreal that we're getting these great opportunities.
So, firstly, can we have a little bit of background about you and your relationship with Wrexham? Because I gather you've been a supporter for a long, long time.
Yes, many years of hurt, and we're recording this after the end of the Euros and people talking about decades of hurt, and I would say that it was like that being a Wrexham fan for a while. It was a continual slide. I was born in '96 and I was a bit too young to remember the promotion in 2002, that kind of team, the great Andy Morrell, Lee Trundle, all that kind of great group. 2005 when we won the LDV Vans Trophy, as it was then, against Southend in Cardiff. That's probably the first real one I can really recall well. And I was just saying before we came on, Darren Ferguson in that team, who's obviously gone on to have a great managerial career. Dennis Lawrence we had at the back. People, your Brian Careys of this world, your Carlos Edwards, Juan Ugarte, my favourite player. So all these great players and managers that we've had. And then it was just a continual slide, really. We finished bottom of the 92, and then we really had to turn to the academy. Then we dropped into non-league, and we thought, okay, probably a year or two here. We're the big scout for everyone. 15 years later, we finally got out, but that was in no short without the backing. We had a far bigger budget than everyone else and better players. That's what you need, and gone back to back. First time in our history, back to back promotions. Phil Parkinson, has achieved legendary status at the club, and dare I say, we're daring to do a Bournemouth, to go from League Two to the Premier League. We know how difficult it is, but at least Wrexham, I mean, you wouldn't have said this before 2020, are dreaming of better days.
Yeah, so look, I think eyebrows were raised, I think, universally in 2020 with the two new prospective owners showing their interest to buy the club. Of course, Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenny. I read somewhere that 98.6% of the Wrexham Supporters Club backed it. Now, to me, that seems like an extraordinarily high amount of people. I mean, if you're British, whether you're English, Scottish, Welsh, you're naturally sceptical. But was it a case of just after seasons in the footballing abyss, fans were just almost looking for any chink of light at the end of the tunnel?
I would say that it dawned on a lot of people that fan ownership had probably taken us as far as we could go. I think that everybody really wanted it to work. Who wouldn't want to rise to the very, very top as a fan-owned club? That is the dream for any fan. I don't care who you support, what level. You'd love to do it where it's purely ethical and there's no sort of rich baron who's running it for you. But we had a 98-point season in 2011-12 where Jamie Vardy's Fleetwood, they went up ahead of us and we were second and we lost in the first round of the playoffs. And, that stung for a lot of people. And then we played Newport County in the final at playoffs, following season. And then that didn't go to plan. We lost that, and that really stung and stuck with the club for years. And it was getting to a point where we used to have things called build the budget, where fans would chuck in money after every game or before every game, and that would be your transfer kitty. And
Right.
it was getting to a point where I think by the time Rob and Ryan came along, and they're very good at what they do. They presented themselves in a really slick manner, but an authentic way, I would say as well. And I think fans really bought into it. Again, you just want to dream that your club could be successful. And I feel like a lot of people had realised that fan ownership perhaps had run its course
Yeah.
in North Wales. And here were two guys who there was an element as well at the time when we were speaking to people that these guys have got they've got a lot on the line. They've got huge reputational
Yeah.
damage if it goes wrong.
True.
It's not an Alex Hamilton. I shouldn't even say that name really, but it's not someone who could come in, rip the club to smithereens, and really sort of fade into the background outside
Mm.
of the bubble that exists. If Ryan Reynolds or Rob McElhenny ran Wrexham into the ground, which they're not going to do,
Mm.
the huge reputational damage that would come with that would be irreparable in other aspects of their life. So, there was an element of that, and also an element of we've give it a go. We've give it a really good go with fan ownership. Now's the time to roll the dice.
Yeah, so at what point did fans learn that this adventure would be documented on the TV? Was that made clear from the off, or was it something that transpired later?
Yeah, it was quite clear
Mm.
early on, and they were filming that initial Zoom meeting. You could kind of see
Yeah.
just off camera, like a slight little big camera off their Zoom screen. That was always going to be quite clear. And I think they spoke in. It was about a 1 hour address to members of the Supporters Trust. They did say that a lot of it is about storytelling, and
Mm. Yeah.
that there was a few raised eyebrows at that. Of course, there was. Is it just going to be a gimmick whereby it's a documentary vehicle, and then what if they stop making the documentary? Are we no longer interested in? Is it a plaything that's no longer being played with type narrative? But really, what they were trying to do is a storytelling thing, because we want to show the world and grow the football club and make it
Yeah.
sustainable and bring on these great sponsors. And you can't do that with just an echo chamber, around North Wales and the North Wales coast. So it's a great opportunity, and dare I say, it's started to cause a trend. I'm not saying it's a definite
Mm.
correlation between, say, Michael B. Jordan getting involved with Bournemouth, but you can quite clearly see this
Yeah.
appetite now for stars to align themselves with clubs, and I think that's only going to grow more and more.
It's interesting. I was reading, as you do, having a look at Wikipedia, and there's a section as they split it into their various chapters. It's called New Owners and the Return to the EFL from 2020 to now to the present day. And through reading it, it's all about Ryan, it's all about Rob, it's all about the media exposure. And yes, of course, it mentions the near promotion and then the eventual promotion, but no mention of managerial changes, like no mention of Phil Parkinson. Now, if I was someone that didn't watch the show, and from reading that and also seeing all the kind of welcome to Wrexham stuff on the news bulletins, I would be thinking that this all sounds like the Rob and Ryan show. But when you watch it, I think your mind is almost instantly changed. What's your take on the way that it's all been put together?
Yeah, I mean, it's Ryan Reynolds, one of the biggest A-listers on the planet. He is universally recognized. I know Rob McElhenny, I'm a huge fan of It's Always Sunny. So to me,
Mm.
he was almost more exciting. When I got to meet him, it was even more thrilling. Um, I, so there's an element of those two are always going to be headline news. Even, I'm jumping ahead slightly, even if Wrexham get up another level and they bring in a backer that's quite
Mm.
happy to sort of sit behind the scenes, they're always going to be the front people you want. They're just very popular, very engaging, very funny. So that isn't really Phil Parkinson. He's not someone who wants the limelight. There was a lot of
No.
question marks initially that, he was at Sunderland. They obviously had a documentary. He wasn't a massive fan of the intrusion of the cameras.
Mm.
He was coming here knowing that that was going to be part of the job. You sign with the proviso that it's already in the contract that
Mm.
they will have cameras in the dressing room. And I think there's been he's warmed to it a bit, in that he said okay, and they listened to him. I've heard stories of can't come into my office here, don't come into the dressing room there, but largely he's been quite open to it because he can see the immense value that it brings. I don't think he minds. I think he cares deeply about the results, and I
Mm.
think his inner circle, what they think about him, and of course the fans. But I don't think he craves the limelight like others do. But yeah, in the documentary, it was a deliberate decision, I think,
Mm.
take, especially the most recent season, in season 3, where Rob and Ryan are not in it as much.
Yeah.
They didn't get over to as many games, but they didn't force their way into it. It is about Phil Parkinson. It is about his coaching staff, and they are the ones there day in, day out. So what Phil Parkinson has done, and people say, well, he's had loads of money and he's got the best budget, so like you just should win these leagues. I can assure you that after 15 years in the National League, winning that is very hard. I don't care what budget you've got.
Yeah.
You have to be flawless, and we were. Notts County were, 98% flawless and just missed out. League Two again, we had a really tough spell at one point, and Ben Foster leaves the football club early on. He goes and gets a goalkeeper that's from Arsenal, and now we've got him on a 3-year contract. So
Brilliant.
loads of little things that he's done have just transformed us really into a club that people are talking about. It could go all the way now. It won't go all the way with Phil Parkinson, but yeah, he's got us to be a League One club that's set up to be competitive.
Now, I'm sure globally, if I was to ask people this question, I think I'd know the answer to this question. But domestically, to the fans of other football clubs, do you think Wrexham have become more likeable as a result of this, or maybe the opposite?
Absolutely not. The complete opposite.
But globally, you're loved, but maybe within the UK, not so much.
That's why we have to do these tours in America, because everyone loves us, so that we'll actually get nice. We won't get booed, and every single post on X or Instagram, you get so many people. Every sign-in is supposedly an £80 million sign-in that Wrexham are ruining football, and I can't wait for this to all end in tears, and they're going to get bored soon, and all this. And you know what, Rich, who I do my podcast with, he loves it. He relishes it, because he admitted that we'd got to a point where Wrexham was so down in their luck that you used to get that patronising pat on the head. The kind of the last pick in PE, where everyone sort of feels a little bit sorry for you and they want you to do well. And when you get good at something, and you may be the best at that sport, everybody hates you and they want to see you pull down a peg or two. So, no, we are very much embracing this villain era that we find ourselves in the UK.
But do you think not being promoted in the first season, and I mean season in every sense of the word, football and on TV, do you think that diluted the hatred a bit?
I don't know. I think it won over a lot more fans abroad, because you look at it now. I hate talking in this sort of speak, but it was good storytelling to have missed out that first season. Now we've had it since.
It's the perfect story, isn't it? It's like a Hollywood script, like waiting to happen. If they'd had success straight away, it wouldn't be as good. We've seen it with so many films over the years.
Yeah, you needed this this difficulty, this strife, really, and I think you're going to see that again in League One. You're going to see coming up against. They'll probably look at Birmingham City. They've just spent 1.5 million on this player, and Wrexham's record is 300,000. And there's the gulf between. And look at, Rotherham went and got 15 million players after one day of the window. So there'll be all of that, and Wrexham will have bad spells. Yeah. But I think that when we missed out to Grimsby, that was obviously agonising. And our former captain was in that team for Grimsby. And the lad who scored the winning goal, Luke Waterfall, also used to play for Wrexham. So it was just brutal all round. But when you look at it now, having had the back-to-back, it was the perfect way to draw people in. And honestly, I know we're coming over and we're playing Bournemouth in Santa Barbara, but the amount of people over there that will talk about how they got sucked in by a documentary is almost not British in any way. Like, I just don't think we would have that same visceral reaction to watching a Hard Knocks or something like that. But they are flying thousands of miles, spending thousands of pounds and dollars just to feel close to something that they watched maybe a year, 2 years ago. So totally profound, really, really amazing.
That's really interesting, because when we got promoted to the Premier League, I think NBC, they did a 45-minute documentary presented by Roger Bennett, one of the men in Blazers. And I think a lot of Cherries fans that we've got now, like over in the States, warm to the underdog story because of that. But obviously yours is over the course of a whole season, or a few seasons as it is now. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you, obviously it's mad, but a lot of the Wrexham players are now household names, like Sir Paul Mullin, Elliot Lee, Jordan Davies, etc. These players, they've been at the club for quite a while now, but do you think that for a player now that's maybe contemplating a move to Wrexham, that can obviously mean more than just the football, I suppose, doesn't it? Can that maybe potentially cause problems?
It's an interesting question. I think right now it's very appealing. We're still in that honeymoon phase of
Mm,
this relationship with Hollywood. That it's very, very glamorous. George Dobson came in, was captain at
mm,
Charlton, and he came in and said, "This is the team in the EFL that every player wants to join."
yeah.
And while there'll be, I'm sure there'll be clubs in the Championship that would beg to differ. There is an argument that Wrexham are one of the most attractive options you have because of the exposure, and it's not just I can meet Rob and I can meet Ryan. It's
Mm,
they have said, I think you've seen it in the documentary as well. They said we will help you if you want to start a business. We will help you
mm,
grow it. We will wear your hoodie. We will promote your cap business or whatever it is. I don't know what all these
yeah,
players are
yeah.
doing, but if you have a venture, we will help you because we know that football is short. You're not going to be with Wrexham forever and a day, and we want to set you up. You're giving to us, to our club right now. They hate when they say that. They never say our club. They always say we're just custodians for now of the football club.
Yeah.
They hate to say it's their club. But yeah, I see what you mean. I think as you go up, that's where pay packets get bigger,
Mm,
egos get bigger, and we're at that point now where okay, Wrexham want to challenge. Do we in League One? Do we want to just
mm,
consolidate? Do we want to go for the playoffs? And if the answer is we want to challenge or we want to get the playoffs, we probably need better players than even
mm,
some of the ones you mentioned there. They cost more money.
yeah,
That probably means breaking the wage structure. What does that mean for Paul Mullin and Elliot Lee, who want
yeah.
parity with these players? We don't know the answer to that yet.
Mm,
And we'll find out in a year or two. And we'll find out when better players come in. And maybe you want to get a championship player. Maybe you want to get a player from abroad.
yeah.
And very fascinating looking at teams like Luton and teams like Bournemouth and some of the money you get to spend now. And we think, wow, that's amazing. Wrexham is so far away from that. But, it's not a million miles
Yeah,
away.
that's
So,
exactly.
it's very interesting.
In the community, it seems that there's a lot of work that Ryan and Rob have been doing. Even in the last documentary, you could see that. It looks from the outside that fans look united and they look closer, etc. But look, we know from having American ownership ourselves that success, it comes at a price. So, what's been the experience of Wrexham fans in terms of what they're forking out to support their club? Is there any resentment among fans about maybe losing their club because of it?
There have been grumbles, all the time, even little things incrementally where we used to be able to go into this thing called a Centenary Lounge at the ground.
Mm.
Then it became you needed to be like a season ticket member for that specific bar, to get in. That was no longer an option. Shirts, for example, we're doing our shirt launch in the US. So,
Oh, wow.
we won't see the kit being worn. We played a preseason friendly the other day at the glamour of Hanley Town, who actually were very, very nice, by the way, but got absolutely drenched there in our old kit because they want it to coincide with, I don't know, Deadpool, Wolverine.
Yeah,
And,
wow.
there are people that think that's frustrating. Or, for example, every signing's, we're having to watch a HP printer because HP are one of our sponsors, and it comes out of a HP printer, piece of paper with the player on. So, and it's a 5-minute live stream where you watch this printer just slowly. And look, these are the prices you've got to pay for.
Mm.
We're quite happy to take HP's money, and we're quite happy to sign George Dobson, and we're quite happy to give Arthur Okonkwo a huge deal to snub championship interest. You don't get it for nothing, all right?
Yeah.
So it's, for example, the preseason tour is something that it irks some people in the fan base, no doubt that
Mm.
I want to watch the tour, but it's on the west coast of America, and I can't afford to pay
Yeah.
£2,000 or £2,500 or whatever it is, and we get that. But there's a huge US fan base, much like yourselves now with Michael B. Jordan and Bill Foley, and you go into an area where I think Bill Foley is,
Mm.
very well known in Santa Barbara, and I think has
Mm.
his hotel there. Um, you've got to play the game. We get to watch these teams every week at home and away, and you can't just take the money of people from abroad and say actually you don't get any of the games. We get to see the kit first. All these different things. So does it irk some people? Of course it does. But
Mm.
you know, those same people quite like these glamorous signings and these double promotions and all these other things. So don't bite the hand that feeds you, I always say.
Yeah, very true. So promotion from the National League was great. Promotion from League Two at the first time of asking was phenomenal. A few clubs have done that before. Not many have done promotion to League One like 3 seasons in a row. So how are they going to make good TV out of a mid-table finish? Now, I'm not saying that's where you're going to finish, but this could be the case for a few seasons now, just while there's a transition in place, because I think transitions take longer the further up the pyramid you are. So how are they going to make good TV out of this?
Yeah, the I say the writers, it's not scripted, is it? But the
Mm,
directors and the producers of it, they've said it the exact same. How can you sell mid-table
mm,
mediocrity? The answer is you can't. You'll get one season grace period because it's interesting. How will they get on in League One?
yeah.
And look, they might if they make the playoffs, then you can maybe give it another go. If you just miss out on the playoffs, it all depends. If Wrexham finish 15th, then maybe the documentary probably doesn't get renewed. But it all depends. I mean,
Mm,
if you put Rob and Ryan in anything, it'll do well. So it's a real difficult one because they're already looking now. What can we do? What narratives do we want to pull at? Who do we want to look a bit more into? They want to look more at Steve Parkin, the assistant, the
mm,
kind of potty mouth, no nonsense assistant manager that became a bit of a hit in season 3. Um, new players coming in. There's new stories to tell there. George Dobson was going to go to Hungary,
mm,
pulled out of that and ended up at Wrexham. You've got the tour again, which will be really
yeah.
interesting. I'm sure, but Bournemouth might make that,
Mm,
especially if Bill Foley or Michael B or anyone like that's there, and Rob will probably be there.
yeah.
Um, and all these other little things. But the answer is you can't have 3 seasons of a documentary finishing 14, 15, 16.
Mm,
So I do wonder though. I do wonder whether it's something they could just put down and pick back up again.
true. Yeah.
In a couple of years. They're not going anywhere as far as I know for now. And we've got season 4 in League One, so who knows? I'm not expecting. I think myself and Rich have said on our show that if we could push for the playoffs, then that'd be amazing. Top 10 in League One would be great. But you know as well as us that you
Mm,
just never know how the league shakes out.
true.
It's
Yeah.
not, it could be that Wrexham fly out the blocks and after 15 games are top, or it could be that they really stumble out the traps and it's suddenly 10 games in you just want to get to mid-table and you snap your hand off a
Mm.
mid-table. So really, really difficult. But to answer the actual question, how can you sell mid-table? You can't.
And look, I know the dream of Premier League football is there. And we've seen the all or nothings, and we've seen all the stuff you see on Netflix, Amazon Prime, etc., behind the scenes, etc. But I feel like with Wrexham, it's been so open and transparent and quite likable. But do you get the feeling that the more you're at the higher end of the leagues, trying to get to the Premier League, of course, being competitive in the Championship, etc., do you think that they'll need to almost keep their cards closer to their chest a little bit and not be so open and transparent for some competitive advantage?
I think they would look to say if they made it to the Championship or they made it to the Premier League, being this open, fairly transparent book, I think they would say that the formula hasn't hurt them so far.
Mm,
Yes, and look, now Wrexham have done really well, amazingly well to get the back-to-back promotions, but now you have 2 huge mountains to
mm,
climb. These are you're looking at players in the Championship that can go for 10 plus million. A different world that is to us. And then the Premier League, I mean, you can just, that is, a different universe, never mind planet, that
mm,
is just otherworldly. So, yes, Wrexham are 2 steps away. And I think that's really appealing to people, and especially fans in the US or abroad. And they say, we've done 2 steps, we're only 2 steps away,
yeah.
but these are giant steps
Mm,
and it will become infinitely tougher. I think the real scary thing is that you just want to keep that community feel. And I know
yeah.
that's hard to do. And you guys, I'm sure, will be able to speak better on it. But, players walking past the fans to get into the players' entrance and
Mm.
signing autographs and having pictures, will that become to the point where, no, they've got their Beats headphones on and their Louis Vuitton wash bags and they don't. And I honestly, I always say this. I remember Swansea fans when they'd just gone up from the Championship to the Premier League, and it was a game at Bolton I was working at, and
Mm.
I remember their fans saying these players always used to stop 6 months ago in the Championship, and now a couple of the new ones, and it was
Yeah.
the Beats headphones, the wash bag, and so it's really tricky. I would love to say that Wrexham will be able to keep it as
Mm.
community focused as they can, but I really do say that with a lot of emphasis. That I really
Yeah.
do hope that whoever is in charge at that point, whether it's Phil Parkinson or someone else, or whoever the CEO is, and if it's still Rob and Ryan by the time we get there, I really hope there's a push for that and keeping that.
Yeah. So Wrexham versus the Vancouver Whitecaps. Before that, Chelsea, and before that, of course, AFC Bournemouth. I think the women are touring over in the US as well, which is huge. We'll be there to see the game, of course, in Santa Barbara. Can you give us some names, apart from the obvious? We know Paul Mullen's not going to be over there, but some names for Wrexham players we should be looking out for?
Oh, okay. So let's try and think. So that's Paul Mullen's the only player that's not going to be over there
Yep.
with the trip. I would keep an eye on. Obviously, he's. I'll give you one obvious one to start. Elliot Lee,
Yeah.
technically brilliant and should be at a high level. I'll pick some different ones that have maybe ones to keep an eye on. Luke Bolton at right
Yeah.
wing back. He plays for us a right back. Very very quick. And so whoever plays down the left for you will be, and whether it's Luke Bolton or Ryan Barnett, they're both absolutely rapid.
Right.
And Ryan Barnett's sporting a new pair of black boots. I think a lot of the lads are going for these bright pink boots, so you won't miss them.
Standard, yeah.
But Ryan Barnett's got that traditional all black. We love that. Very no nonsense. But yeah, right hand side, we're very very quick. So whoever's on the left for you, I think would get a decent workout, a decent run around.
Mm.
And who else can I go with? George Dobson's really interesting because
Yeah.
again we played him in a diamond, and fans are still getting used to him. What will he be like? He sat in the base of a diamond, and I'll have to say this name because Rich says he's the best player at Wrexham ahead of Paul Mullin. George Evans, who was at Millwall. You know, he's so graceful on the ball. He's like a gazelle. He just glides through everyone. He's playing in slow motion. It's really interesting because the preseason game we just played a 4-4-2 diamond in the first half and a 4-3-3. I would imagine against Bournemouth we'll probably go back to the 3-5-2 that Phil Parkinson loves.
Yeah.
And that will involve probably a Tom O'Connor, who's really, really good at left centre back. And look, if it's a 3-5-2, I'll give you the predicted team that I would think would play against Bournemouth.
Oh,
It'll
love
probably
this.
be Arthur Okonkwo in goal, almost
Yeah.
certainly. I would say James McLean will play at left wing back.
Right.
Probably a back three. I mean, they'll rotate it, but let's say Tom O'Connor, Owen O'Connell, and maybe Aaron James or Max Cleworth. Max Cleworth will be our first choice, but again, they'll rotate and mix the groups up a little bit. Let's say Ryan Barnett on the right, George Evans in midfield with George Dobson and Elliot Lee,
Mm.
and probably a front two of Ollie Palmer and Jack Marriott. That's probably roughly. That won't be too far off, I don't
Yeah.
think. So plenty of experienced heads in there. I'm not sure what you guys will look like. We're probably more excited of what you guys will look like, but that's who we're going to go with, I would say.
It's quite interesting, actually, because friendlies are, I mean, I used to despise them. I'm getting a little bit more fond of them these days, but it's just the constant changes and rotations going on, especially in the second half. It just makes it stop-start all the time, but I expect we'll have a 4-2-3-1 formation, and I'd like to think it would be fairly similar to how we ended the Premier League. The only player of note that we won't have, that we've lost, is Lloyd Kelly, who's gone to Newcastle. But other than that, I think we'll be fairly strong. We're all just hoping we can keep hold of Dom Solanke for the season because he's absolutely huge for us. I'm sure we'll go over it on our predicted team shows on future videos here on Back of the Net. But look, about your podcast, right? What's the documentary done for you?
Yeah, amazing things. You know, we're very, very fortunate in that, you know, myself and Rich have known each other a long time, known each other in university, and always something we wanted to do, but we just felt, you know, who's going to want to listen to us after a 3-0 defeat at Ebbsfleet in the rain? Probably not. We wouldn't want to listen to ourselves. So when the takeover was going through, we thought, look, we've got to do this. You know, we are both sports writers, both lifelong fans, got to do this. And yeah, the reaction, you know, I've utmost respect for anyone who does a podcast because I know the work that goes into getting guests and editing it and putting it together each week. I know that it is not easy, and yeah, to have the response we've had is phenomenal, and we're very well aware that, you know, the exposure with which Wrexham has done wonders for us. And you know, we're not taking anything away from that, but yeah, it's been great. We've got great support, and I know when we go over to, we're doing the Canadian leg of this tour.
Brilliant.
So we'll be following you guys at Back of the Net for the Santa Barbara game. You know, we'll get great hospitality, and we're very, very fortunate. You know, we're staying with a listener over there, and you know, people can't do enough. So yeah, if anyone ever wants to slum it down in League One, not be Premier League fancy boys, then yeah, listen to us, Rob Ryan Red. You can follow all the Wrexham news on there. But yeah, it's been amazing, whirlwind couple of years, honestly.
So that was going to be my last question. How could people follow you? But you've done that already. Much appreciated. Look, best of luck for the season ahead. We'll all be watching, and we'll be, I'm sure on a Saturday, we'll be checking out the BBC League One results during the season, and we'll be waiting for the documentary. I'm sure people will be listening to your podcast as well. But can I just say, yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Nathan.
Thank you very much. And look, I will also say to Bournemouth, all the best. Fingers crossed for a European push. We've seen it's possible with all these other teams. Who would have thought a few years ago Aston Villa in the Champions League,
Yeah.
and Brighton in the Europa League. So yeah, I've got my fingers firmly crossed. You're a very, very good club, and I'm sure if Dom Solanke's on the plane, hopefully you can all breathe a sigh of relief.
If you're not now subscribed to their podcast as a result of that comment, what are you doing? Bournemouth fans, make sure you get on it and make sure you like and subscribe and stay tuned because there are more videos on the way and we'll be travelling out there very soon. We'll even have a travel vlog. What are we doing? Looking forward to it. I'm the Cherries and we'll see you in the next one.